Welcome to Seen and Heard podcast, where everyone should be seen and heard. And my special guest is Fusha with Fusha with Industrious Media. Nice to meet you. And our show tonight is brought to you by. I have to click this on here. We have sponsors. It's sponsored by On the Go Cooking with Itake and Oye Coffee, Nashville.
Oh, I'm a coffee fan.
Yes. And Oye Coffee, that happens to be my nephew's. But they are our sponsors. So I will post a link in the description of the video when we get done with the show. So you can go and check out those sites. Nice to meet you. And welcome to Seen and Heard podcast. And I'm going to turn the mic over to you so you can give us an introduction and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me on, Sharon. This is the first time I think I've been on somebody else's live stream. So, yeah, I'm very excited. Yeah.
Thank you.
And I'm the founder of Illustrious Media, INLUSTRIS. It's a Latin word for starlight. And the logo that we created is actually, so it's three vertical lines with a dot on the first one. So it looks like I and M. But the vertical lines represent, it draws inspiration from the bamboo scrolls or books, as they used to call them in China. This is before paper. And so this is how people would transport and put down knowledge, stories, and they would just roll up in like the scroll that's made of bamboo, segments of bamboo. And that's because it speaks to kind of my background as being born in China and was there in my very formative years, and then left in grade school in like around 7 or 8. And I grew up in the UK, the US. So, but I kept, my Chinese speaking, and also I have, I read, but not as well, and I'm working on that. I have worked I have translated screenplays between Chinese and English, several ones, and worked with people over there. And went to school in LA for film writing and directing at Arsenal College of Design, which is where Michael Bay and Zack Snyder went. The school trains a lot of like high-end visual artists and designers. I was able to take the opportunity to work with a lot of people to create and build my own intellectual properties, IP. In my case, it's a sci-fi epic universe, something like like a new modern version of all the things I've played, read, and watched and enjoyed. But also, because of my background, we're gonna start integrating more Eastern, more Chinese, and East Asian elements into it, and do so in an intelligent way, not in a ham-fisted way, and not in a cringy way or mildly racist way. So and I do have this, I'm very optimistic and but also extremely aggressive minded because of, I know how fast Asia moves. I know how fast Asia thinks and implements. And so I'm, kind of clocking myself to that side of the world while building my own media company, because ultimately intellectual property and ownership of said IP, that's where all the money and power is and will be. We can talk about that in a bit, but yeah, and this is kind of where we're at. So I'm in the process of basically building up an e-commerce side of the company in order to start making income, at least learn the ropes of running that kind of a business on the creative intellectual properties that we are developing.
So how long have you been working on that, building up your company and your brand?
So Illustrious Media became, I think, official incorporation was May of last year. Not incorporation, but with the pound stamped.
Right, right.
The document was May something last year, and but the sci-fi IP that I've been creating, developing, that's been in the works since 2010, 2011. And the very first creative narrative thing I ever started writing was 2008. So Thanksgiving. So I still have the old file, which is something just weird. I have it, but so it's been all this time. It's been like various forms of development, different characters, storylines, and yeah, just a lot of like. So now I'm basically trying to find a way so I can not have to work a regular job, so I can concentrate.
Like us all.
Yeah.
I'm going to work with you on that. So, how about anime? Will you incorporate anime?
Yeah,
Manga?
the you can see in the back there's Cowboy
Yes,
Bebop.
I was looking at that. Yeah, I
Yeah,
like that.
but I'm a fan of Mecha Gundam. I'm also a fan of hard sci-fi,
Mhm.
and so we're gonna have we have elements of that in the IP we developed, um, and but it's like anime is very quintessentially Japanese. It's got all the Japanese quirks and the stylistic elements. I don't like the one thing I always say, despite talking about the Asia Pacific a lot, which I am, is that as Asian diaspora, Asian Americans, we're
Mhm.
not going to be able to out Korea. We're not going to be able to out Japan, and we're not going to be able to out China.
Right.
Um, that's a silly game to get into unless you're willing to really go deep and immerse yourself and give that have that kind of humility to do it. But uh, what we do have the abilities, we have a certain level of cultural acuity, awareness, language connection awareness, and where we still have a lot of the edge is actual Hollywood background and training, and the understanding of how to create something that's very kind of like polished and can hit four quadrants, and we have that kind of sensibility to do so. Um, and to me, it's interesting how you have a lot of the Hollywood stars, like A-list or like B-listers or A-listers, whatever, and they always talk about the need for more representation. And then you go on the look at the credits of every Marvel movie, every major, like high concept sci-fi this and adventure that. You see all the Asian names, Asian American artists and talent. I'm like, why haven't anybody gone ahead and built an entire cinematic universe that
Right.
stars you all have the ability to draw these characters. You all have the ability to design their machines, their weapons, their costumes, the entire world, and yet y'all don't want to, or no one's gone ahead and just did that for us, that we can own and control. So that's kind of one of my kind of approaches to do just that.
So what we were talking about earlier, staying within the box or the standards that are already set. Do you find it really hard to um, express the need to focus on what you were just talking about, the Asian um, aspect and
What do you
representation?
mean, the box? I don't understand
Like
that question.
what we were saying, say they have representation. Oh, okay, like like with the adaptations and the remakes of Asian films, so like Old
Right.
Boy, the Rangu, and then soon to be Train to Busan.
Mm-hmm.
So Train to Busan is going to be done by
Mm-hmm.
Timo Chianto, and what's the producer, James Wan.
Okay.
So even though they're Asian, they are still working in the confines of the standards that are already set in
Yeah.
Hollywood.
Mhm. So I feel the way I see those projects, actually following an old model, an older model.
Mhm.
Um, and the old model is export and import and export and import, right? So actually, the current standing model, and this is changing, so the line's getting blurred right now. But let's say the old model is basically Hollywood makes a product, they export it. Hollywood makes Transformers, they export to the China market, to the Malaysian market, to the Japanese market, to Korea, and Europe, Western Europe, Russia, whatever. And that's kind of like, it gets made here, it gets moved over there. And same thing with, like movies like originally back in the day, Crouching Tiger, that was a Chinese or Hong Kong film.
That was a great film.
Yeah, and but it's like a foreign language, whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's still very much, or they take something that, for example, the Hong Kong film Infernal Affairs, where it says they remade it, right? Into yeah. So it's still very much export, export, import, or take it, remake it, and then put it to this different market. Mm-hmm. I think that model is dated. I think there'll always be a situation like that, but I think rather instead of dated or obsolete, I call it incomplete, because that was a time when the markets were very much distinct. But now when you have Netflix and Hulu and Amazon Prime, across multiple years now, I guess at least half a decade, where they're showcasing Korean, Japanese, natively Korean, Japanese, and Chinese produced content. Mm-hmm. Like my roommate, who's Algerian American, he's not Chinese or Asian. Mm-hmm. He actually sent me to this show on Amazon Prime at the time called Longest Day in Chang'an, and it's a period costume drama. He loved it, and I watched it. I didn't finish it, but I was like, oh, okay. And it's all in Chinese. You'd have to, subtitles or nothing, I think.
Right.
And I was like, wow, because this is basically adjusting people's tastes. And the reviews are solid. Got like 4.5 or 5 stars underneath it, and that kind of what joggles. So you see now, I have this, like the way I see what I'm doing is I want to create content that is natively global, in the same way that video game brands are, right? Movies still operate in the frame of this is the market, and then we export. Grand Theft Auto, Halo, Mass Effect, Red Dead Redemption do not operate on those terms, and they don't care. Kid in Poland who speaks no English, kid in Japan who speaks no English, kid in China who speaks no French, kid in South America who speaks no English. They all know when the next Grand Theft Auto comes out. They all know when the next Halo game drops. They all know when this. You see, they don't need to be. They don't need to be like adjusted for it.
Right.
And as now filmmaking can, the tech is going to allow people to basically animate lips and mouths, and you can just. It's a little freaky, but sure, you can still do the subtitles. But at a certain point, that is not even going to be necessary.
Well, I grew up with the dubbing, with watching Bruce Lee films, and then they had the really bad dubbing. And I was a kid, so I didn't really know the nuances of that. But speaking of successes, the Squid Games. Okay, there was conversation, especially because I have a group on Facebook that I started specifically for like Asian content. And so I was just constantly posting about it for months. It was like, okay, it's coming soon. Here's another trailer and here's an article. So I was keeping up with it. So when it came out, I watched it and I binge watched it. Actually, I watched it in 2 days. And so that was that. After I watched it, that was that. And then it was like, I went to sleep and I woke up and it was like, boom. It was like this huge success. I was like, no. And my feeling is I want to keep it my little secret. I don't want I especially don't want like Western audiences to start liking stuff because then they're going to try to water it down, because there was even a conversation about dubbing Squid Games. I had my ears can't fathom that, because I want to hear the actual language and then read the subtitles. I don't want to hear English people talking over.
Yeah, I'll say this much. It's like, so in terms of, it's interesting being an Asian American and seeing the success of Squid Games, right? Because Asian Americans, you like, based on what happened with Mulan, and there's a whole problems with that movie. Okay,
the live action
one,
right?
But what Asian Americans saw is that, so the star, they sought a Chinese actress for this, right? And with K-drama, the Korea wave is almost always going to be Korean centric, and so there's this kind of like uncomfortable. At the one hand, it's awesome. On the other hand, for Asian Americans, there's this kind of like rumblings of, are we getting the ugly stepchild treatment? People are posting about that, and I'm like, unfortunately, Yes, because we have been, all these years we've been trying desperately to be assimilated and to be validated and approved by people here, when the rest of the world doesn't give a damn and doesn't care and don't have a problem. And so now it's like this again. This is where I'm kind of building my own company, doing my own thing. Is that it goes back to kind of my philosophy of being fully like building a natively global company anchored in the Asia Pacific but global facing, and becoming like a own or like a freestanding pillar of media projection and production for the world audience. Where the purchasing power in terms of growth is all going to be coming from the Asia Pacific. So why would I prioritize what executives in Los Angeles think or don't think? That makes no sense. That makes no financial sense. That makes no creative sense. And ultimately, you got to understand, like, Hollywood is not the customer. Not the customer. They're not the person who's going to be paying for the tickets. They're not the people. They're going to be, they're approving their projects, but if you know how to make if you manage to find a way to monetize your creative stuff, do you really need anybody's approval for anything?
Right.
And the more share you gain, the more economic like agency you have from the stuff you already create yourself, then the better negotiating power you'd have with Hollywood. And I'm not saying, swear off of them, never work with them. It's not a monolith. Hollywood's not a monolith. Sometimes it's just a way it just moves like one. But like ultimately they'll say, oh shit, this person has created something that can do pretty well.
They thought Parasite was a fluke.
Yeah. And so now, like, if you approach them as if you're just a screenwriter with no credits to your name and all you have is a pitch deck and a screenplay or a couple, whatever, you have no you have no leverage to negotiate. They can just put a lock in your project, say, okay, we'll take this off your hand. Here's the option. Here's how much you get. And you have to keep your mouth shut about this to everybody, whatever. And now go back and create something more shit to pitch. And I'm like, I spent years on my thing. I'm going to make money on it no matter what. So if I were to create something and I find a way to monetize it, then it's a money generating asset in the marketplace. So when I show up to make to executives of studios, I don't have an agent. I don't give a shit. Okay. So I do my job right, they're going to be coming at me trying to get my business. But the attitude would be, this IP that I've created, developed, branded, trademarked. We're in the process of doing that right now. Trademark is how you officialize ownership, right? And so it's already generating X amount of dollars per month, per quarter. This is what I want to do with it, narratively and creatively. If you invest, it's going to cost you this much, and we can move faster. If you don't invest, I'll probably just take it a little bit, wait a little bit, maybe crowdfund some stuff, and get it done anyway. And then you're going to come back to me again, and it's going to cost you that much more, and you might have a lot more competition. And it's it's a very different kind of attitude. So this is kind of like going back to, and the thing with Hollywood is like, Asian Americans, that we haven't been building this kind of creative infrastructure in the same way that the Black community has. I model myself kind of after James Cameron in terms of creative, kind of like visual, like kind of polish and approach. Guy's a very good visual artist, not just director. Did map paintings and stuff. But I also, look to the business acumen of someone like Tyler Perry, someone like Oprah, because both Tyler Perry and Oprah understood from the very early stages that they were never going to be able to convince anybody to back them. They're going to have to build their own vehicle and be able to stand on 2 damn feet. And so Tyler Perry can rightfully say, even though he makes, these seemingly studio films, where he say, I'm not in the system, He built his own. As Asian Americans, Asian diaspora, we don't have the population that African Americans do have, where you can be a Tyler Perry, create that kind of, not even like kind of niche content, but is it really that niche, when he can consistently make that kind of money? And he doesn't need to worry about it. Asian Americans do not have those numbers.
Not yet.
Well, we're on the same page with a lot of Asian diaspora around the world. Especially Asian guys, we face a lot of the same issues with emasculation, with dehumanization. Asian women do face that as well, but they've always been, had more of a kind of a easier way into some of these larger roles that Asian men have not been allowed to.
Right.
So I don't care what the reason is anymore, because that's just wasted time and energy. I care about what I'm going to do in the future. And so what we can do is we can then take that and Hollywood know-how and do what Tyler Perry did, but towards more of an Asia Pacific, and we can then utilize cultural acuity, language acuity, and the willingness to collaborate and build together with people, with artists, with designers there. And by the way, white artists and designers are doing the same goddamn thing already in China. Okay.
Right. Yeah, that's why Lucas got the green light in that K-drama Penthouse with those dreads and the gold teeth. That never should have left the cutting room floor.
Yeah.
That never should have passed go. Never.
Yeah. So if we do, so as far as Asian Americans, the way I see it is that there's a huge path forward. The issue is there's a lack of awareness. There's a lot of talk of trying to fight for a seat at Hollywood's table, but the way and the bamboo wall, the bamboo ceiling, and the issue is that 30 years ago, that whole block, that mental block, the issue might be actually legitimately compelling enough, to say, okay, this is a real problem. But now, the way I see it is that you're seeing, like, what Asian Americans have been doing. This is the bamboo wall right here. Like, it's a circle. It's like a 30-mile zone, and we're just sitting like right here in front of it. So we don't see the top, left, right, or bottom. We think it's huge. Actually, just this big, 30-mile TMZ around LA, and that's all there is to it. And in its entirety, Hollywood is just another chair at the world table. And the world table is always open. No one is in charge of it. No one gatekeeps it. It's high, it's big, it's rough, it's unkempt. You're going to have to build your own chair and get to it.
Yep.
But just speaking real practically, if you're a young, creative person with that drive and creative ability to create original, awesome content, the amount of time, energy, and headache it takes to get to the Hollywood table is about the same as building your own chair for the world table.
Exactly.
Except you own that chair, you own the access, and when you get there, you are on equal terms with Hollywood itself. So I don't see the need to want to worry about trying to get into the, I'll get a seat at a table. Like, I don't care. It's a small table, and even when you get there, as you do hear like writers of color who do make it to these writing rooms, is that you don't get to pick the menu, right?
Right.
You're there. They put it in front of you. Okay, here's a character of this ethnicity group that you have
exactly.
And you go punch up. And,
right.
And so would you get to get promoted? I don't know. Maybe not. It might be better. But I'm not interested in rehashing what Hollywood's like or existing brands. I'm interested in creating brand new ones. And owning that, and I know there's more people with my creative ability out there who are still trying to get into the system when you should be building the groundwork for your own mansion. And
I was reading articles about like how Hollywood is they're blindsided and stumped as to why they're actually not people are not paying them as much attention anymore, and they're confused about it. It's kind of like Netflix. Okay, Netflix took away sharing passwords. It's kind of like that. It's like, okay, why are we losing money? Why are we losing money? It's like, okay, you guys, it's like right in front of your face. Why do you think? Why do you think people are tired of the same formula and that formula that you guys are stuck in, and you try to keep everybody else stuck in? I mean,
I don't actually have a Netflix subscription. So I can't really say to what formula, because I haven't watched enough of the stuff to know. The one thing I'll say is that, and I made a few TikToks on this, but it's a Netflix now they're doing it. Netflix is now like a couple articles came out recently how Netflix is going to now finally try to make their own Star Wars or their own Lord of the Rings or their own whatever epic IP, and that's something they should have done started like 4 years ago, because it's it's like people think it's just about money. It's not about. It's not simply about money. You can pay Gordon Ramsay like $1,000, and give him an hour to cook an epic meal.
Mhm.
He'll do a pretty good job, a very good job. You can pay him $1 million and say, now you do that same meal in 20 minutes. He's gonna be like, no man, not happening, not that quality. And
Mhm.
so this is where Netflix is like there's this cosmic speed limit of creativity that does exist, that you can't rush creativity. Even if you take an existing IP, like somebody wrote a book series, and now you got to develop it.
Mhm.
Well, that still takes time, and that takes love and care and commitment and passion, and you can't fake that, right?
Mhm.
You can't fake that. You can't. You can't. It's just like no more than Kobe can fake. Like his like how many 100,000 hours of practice and how many 100,000 shots he took to get to be where he's at.
Mhm.
Can't fake that. So so I think they're starting to get the message, but this is something they should have started like 4 or 5 years ago because that's how long it takes. And this is where kind of having the understanding of video games development cycle would actually help them, because you're talking about a world that needs to be that well thought out. George Lucas started writing Star Wars when he was 12.
Mhm.
Imagine thinking about it. So, and I started doing my thing for my universe when I was, my late 20s, 10, 11 years ago. And so it's had all this time to just kind of naturally, like every piece of music I listen to, everything I've watched and played, that comes in and says, oh, okay, there's a character idea here, there's a story thread. It could be something as simple as an action sequence that I never dreamed of. I get inspired and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that would be cool, and that comes naturally. And so there's a way with enough money, you can accelerate this to an extent by adding bodies and throwing bodies. But those minds and bodies need to be guided by like a real passionate visionary,
Mhm.
and they have to have buy-in. He needs to have buy-in on his designers. So, like a AAA video game title, like the Red Dead series or Mass Effect,
Mhm.
those take 4 or 5 years minimum. And that's basically to create an entire world where the player's going to go in there and try everything, fuck around with every little thing, get every little bit of dialogue, and and see however many permutations they can mess with the world or interact with the world. And that's the level of detail and the minutia that needs to be done. You can't just do it because, oh, we're Netflix, we have how much money, we have a huge war chest. Yeah, all it's going to come out is going to be a very expensive empty shell. Um, you can't, like, it's like growing a tree. You
You have
can't.
to nurture.
Yeah, and you basically need to put somebody on there to just be completely committed and driven with a team behind him or her
Mhm.
to achieve this vision.
Right.
And that's something that they could have done. Again, if they did it 4 or 5 years they started, they will have something in fruition right now. Now they're getting started, and it's
So
going to be
are you the type that when you go to sleep, like it seems like you're like always thinking. So when you go to sleep, do you wake up in the middle? Like, do you have keep a book next to your bed? Because if
yeah.
you you wake up
I
in the
keep
middle of the night.
I keep my phone. I keep Microsoft Notes notebook
Mm-hmm.
on there, and I just like immediately jot something down. I have the phone with me always, so I have a notebook that's basically a section for character ideas, scene ideas,
Mm-hmm.
um, and it's something that yeah, I encourage all creators. People most likely they
I
know
got
what we're
one on
doing.
my phone too.
Exactly,
Yeah.
yeah.
What are you drinking? So do you
Just
have a
water.
team that you work with now, or is it just you and your company?
So I'm a writer and creative lead,
Mhm.
and I can art direct. and I've worked with multiple people, but always on a freelance basis. I don't have the money to hire them yet. So I've worked with several different concept designers before. One of them is a guy named Robert Simons. He has this company called Gadget Dash Bot. He does have a presence on TikTok, big, pretty large account, 650K. He creates this right now. His IP that they're developing is called Kydro Chronicles. And so I worked with him, like that's the first artist step on board, very talented guy. And because of his help and because the kind of results he delivered to me as the no-name student with no money, people like in that department took me more seriously because they know what this guy's capable of. He never graduated because he didn't need to. Now he runs his own company. Then we work with other artists on and off, and then so we got to a level where I started working with a branding designer also from my school, and he's now in Australia. So he's helped me build the entire illustrious brand, and also different segments of the IP. And those are the things that we're working on getting trademarked right now. And then yeah, we're gonna start developing products and just see how and go through that process. But yeah, that's kind of like, so it's like freelance, right? Sometimes concurrently, but just for cost issues and also time issues, because it's not just a case of I hire them, they can do the job. It's like I hire them, I got to figure out how they can do the job. And then I got to figure out how do I put together the document so that they can efficiently look at what I need them to do. And then we'll go back and forth on a few rounds. And then like there's a process of working so that's not frustrating and wasteful. And ultimately, when at this level, where I am right now, I'm playing with talent that are getting paid a lot more money with actual Hollywood productions. So it's not even though I'm technically higher than them, I'm always actually the one pitching to them. Because these people, these artists and these designers do not need my money. They have full-time gigs. Right. They do not need the cash. They're doing this because they're interested and they care. And that is, in fact, like on the one hand, it's kind of a lot of work that you got to go through, but it teaches how to pitch. Like you're really kind of pitching to get like talent on board, and that's where it all starts. It's not about the audience at this point. It's about getting people that I want to work with, who thinks that what I'm doing has that kind of potential and it's actually worthwhile. And it's like this balancing act of knowing how to guide them visually, because they're professionals, and if they step on board, they know they're working towards your vision with you. But how do you then get the best out of them? And also don't fuck with the process. You don't just, when they send something back in to me, and I a lot of times I'll look at it and go, oh, I don't find that appealing, but I will never say that. I'll let it sit. I'll always give it, a bunch of days, and eventually I can understand where they're coming from. And a good chunk of the time, I was like, say, oh, okay, I totally understand, and actually that's a better choice. So there's learning to be done like that, and this is kind of like where. This is where that speed limit of creativity comes in. It's not just you, the guy who's driving the train. It's like, are all the cars moving, connected, and going in the same direction, willingly? And are you able to get the vision that you want to do while getting the best out of the people you're working with? So there's no best thing. It's like I could hire 4 people and they could do equally great jobs at this one thing that I want them to do, but I'll end up probably using all 4 of them if they're good. But it's never, oh, this is better, absolute terms than others. So this is again coming back to like, this is how you have to work with artists and creatives.
Especially as a team, because everybody's perspective is different. Like
Exactly.
4 people, you're trying to accomplish the same goal, but everybody's coming at it a different way, and one way is not better than the other. So yeah.
So when people think that they need a massive operation behind to get something done, no, you just need to have you and 1 or 2 other people who have buy-in, who are very skilled and talented. And most people, frankly, can afford to hire something like that, provided you can get them onto your project and you show that you have all your ducks in a row. You show that you have all your reference documents and everything they need to do their job, and you show that up front so that they know, okay, this person's a professional. If I join up with this, I'm not going to be wasting my time. If I add this to my schedule of other freelance work or whatever, I'm not going to be wasting my time. So that's kind of like one of the bigger lessons I learned.
You're inspiring. I'm so glad you came on my show with me. So speaking of China, your home China. So do you have a favorite Bruce Lee movie?
It's been so long since I watched them. I mean, like Into the Dragon. I saw the documentary recently. I wanted to make a YouTube series on him, but it's like Into the Dragon is what I remember the most. So I need to watch the other one to say clearly exactly what to come out with a favorite.
Fist of Fury was not my favorite.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I love that one too.
Fist of Fury.
My take on Bruce Lee is that it's like the Asian American community never got past worshiping him, which is a tragedy, because there's this passage, a very famous passage in the book Dune, where the main character, Paul Atreides, is like, he sees how the desert people all of a sudden worship him, and he sees the tragedy that will bring. And because when you worship something, I don't know, I can't recall the line word for word, but it's very famous. One of the things you can search up easily if you look up Dune, and he talks about how when these free people, these Fremen, they were living on their own terms for so long, and then they encountered something they worship, and then they lost any old sense of their own agency itself, something like that.
So they were living through him.
Yeah. So basically, they stopped looking at Bruce Lee. We Asian Americans stopped looking at him critically, not to critique him. We started worshiping him. We don't think about what he did. So he came up in a time where the racism was far more out and open and blatant, much more volatile. And he had this indomitable spirit to get it done anyways, who said, who looked at a wall, looked at the barrier, said, I'm going to fucking find a way past it and through it, or whatever the hell it takes to get through it. And I am a human being, and I have 24 hours in a day, and these are the things I think, this is the attitude I have, this is the mental frame I have, and these are the things I do on my 24 hours in this day to get it done. Asian Americans, from that, after he passed, just simply just worshipped him and never looked at the fact that this is a human being, this is a man, not a god, not some, celestial being, and, with special powers or something. He had just massive determination and all go no quit, something like that. And he would, and the amount he was able to accomplish when he was alive, Asian Americans seem to never really attempt afterwards. Even when he was back in the day, he refuses to take roles that dehumanize Asians. And we still got Ken Jeong making an ass out of himself, this day and age. What the fuck are you doing? You're gonna clap for Ken Jeong while worshiping Bruce Lee. That makes no goddamn sense to me, Right. And Bruce Lee, if you were alive today, I think he would be doing something a lot closer to what this one person called Chatri Sityodong. He created this company called One Championship, OneFC.com, ONEFC.com, and and on the face of it, it looks like the UFC equivalent of Asia, but it's so much more. Chatri is apparently Joe Rogan's a fan, but Joe Rogan's an MMA fan, so that figures. But what to me, what Chatri represents is probably closest to the modern day rendition of Bruce Lee in terms of spirit, drive, and mentality. And I'm talking about completely aside from the point of the martial arts angle. To me, that's what excites me about Bruce Lee was that
he was more philosophical.
Yeah, it's like there's no reason why it took this long for someone like Chatri to come along and build a media empire, anchored in Singapore. Chachi is an Asian American, went to Tufts University and then Harvard HBS. Apparently, his mom was living with him in a Harvard dorm at the time, in his time here, because they didn't have any money,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And so this is someone that maximized everything, all go no quit, and and I always say, if Bruce Lee were to look down from whatever beyond he's at at the Asian American scene right now,
Mm-hmm.
and that TV series Warrior that was happening a few years ago, that Justin Lin took the lead to help develop.
Right.
It's which channel is on. You'd be like, I've been there for 50 years, and you guys are still just retreading the path of what I dreamed. Really? I've been there for half a century, and this is my dream. What? How do you guys not have your own MCU? How do you guys not have your own fucking, like Mass Effect or ginormous fucking
I mean, the way
franchise?
you put it, when you put it that way, you're right because of like.
Yeah, it's like, oh, let's sing praises. I mean, I don't want to crap on the show, but I'm just trying to give the
Right.
context here. How sad and pathetic that is. It's just like the man would be rolling his grave. It's like I had to deal with all this shit, and all
Open
you
doors
do
for you, and you're just like, well,
and
I
all
just
you do
sat at
now is
that big
put out
table.
this sass sack image, and beclown yourself and settle for everything while whining about, oh, there needs to be more representation or something like that. When you could have, like, if you have someone like like these stars, like Daniel Wu, Sung Kang, you know what they do on the weekends? They drive a car around a track. You know what I do on my weekends? I haul ass, right? I use whatever money and funding I have available, and this trademark is going to cost me a bundle, because
Oh
every
yeah, I know
line.
how much they cost.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly, right,
working
and
towards that for my business.
exactly, and
Yeah.
so what I'm doing is like, I'm basically doing my own version of what Shatri is doing with One Championship. One Championship is not just some fight promotion. One Championship is about saying the martial arts comes from Asia, has origins in Asia, and is a thing of beauty and a thing of honor and a thing to behold. And all our fighters come from these hard scrabble backgrounds, and so they're heroes. If they make it to my stage, my One Championship octagon, they've already achieved a lot to be here. So this is a story we tell about them. They come in, these fighters come in, it's this massive short documentary featurette about their background, where they come from, family, everything. It's not like, fucking Conor McGregor making an ass out of himself. It's not people, like, not the UFC drama crap. No, it's like this person comes from this part in Thailand, this village, whatever here. This person comes from this part in Philippines or China, and this is what they had to go through. And now they're here. They're heroes, and we're gonna be in for a show. And the production, everything they do is kind of like with that vibe. It's kind of like it's there's positivity instead of negativity and stupid drama, And he's got one studio, so he's the host of The Apprentice in Asia. They just recently signed a deal. In fact, that is actually promoted right now on Amazon Prime Live. So check that out. I hope it's up for people to watch later. They signed a deal with Amazon Prime. They're one of the top 7 media entertainment companies on the planet now. Most Asian Americans have barely heard of this guy or barely heard of the company because Hollywood doesn't care or don't really want to promote that because that shows that this is a company that's going to sideline them. So One Studios is this TV and film operation. They have One Esports. So you see how the age stratification is so ingenious, right? UFC, or rather, mixed martial arts skews older, and it's also natively global. Okay, it doesn't matter if you're an MMA fan. You could be in the UK. You could be in freaking Florida. You could be in Brazil. You watch your fighter from Brazil duking it out with that fighter from Thailand. Everybody's on the same page. Language barrier, national barriers, and time zones be damned. And
it's
so
like one soccer.
exactly, right. And so that brand and the apparatus he's building sits above and apart from Hollywood.
Mhm.
So he doesn't need anybody's approval to drive his numbers. And so that's the older crowd and a more kind of, like that crowd. One esports is during the pandemic, he couldn't do live events. So they basically had to jumpstart their esports business, which is going to be younger, teenagers, preteens, Fortnite, League of Legends. And all these kids are going to grow up knowing what the one logo looks like. They're going to know what the one championship looks like. And and if he decides to promote his fighters, cross promote them through that thing, or he decides to promote his game or his game team through that thing, it's going to be that much more powerful. And then it was like, okay, well, one of my fighters has some acting chops, and this game that maybe he just might develop a video game. I don't know, but they might say, let's develop an action TV series,
Mm-hmm.
that we're going to produce. He's got that audience that knows exactly who the hell is going to star, and so on and so forth. And that is what Bruce Lee. That's in line with Bruce Lee's thinking. That kind of taking self-agency, thinking ginormously big, and never settling for a second place ever. That's what he would do, and that's my thinking too. I'm not doing the fight promotion, but that's the kind of content that I want to create. That kind of 4-quadrant, that could connect more directly by culture, but sits high enough in terms of generality to be able to connect with like a wider audience.
Mm-hmm.
But so yeah, this is my take on Bruce Lee. He's, to me, the closest thing we've had to Bruce Lee, and I'm not interested in just to take after them. My goal is to enable a lot more young Asians to fucking think like that, to think that big, and to get out there and build for this future. Because the time pressure here isn't coming from Hollywood. The time pressure I see is coming from Asia. It's I made that little like one of those things where like the 5 reasons why it's a huge opportunity, and the reason why I call it 5 years instead of 50 is because I don't want to deal with the kind of competition that Asia can unleash once they get the wheels under them.
Right.
You're talking about like the numbers are just insane, and it's like you don't want to be trying to get your. I don't want to still be in the process of getting my brand out there.
Right.
Once
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about because I watch it with their record labels, with their entertainment companies over there. Like it's specifically, well, I watch both models from Japan and South Korea, and you're exactly right. And it's kind of like, and especially, and kind of like why I'm trying to get mine going, even though I'm like a little bit behind you, but I'm still going the same way and the same concept, basically like you, on an expanded scale, because the time is right to do it now instead of sitting here waking up every day and not trying to work toward the accomplishment of getting the goal, getting to the goal. You wake up and just say, oh, this needs to be done. This needs to be done. Okay, well, we're doing it. Because if you don't do it, then somebody else is going to do it because they're thinking the same way you are. They have more money.
Yeah. And it's like the open field I see is it's going to be coming out of Southeast Asia. China's kind of have the situation where they don't need to export too much to make huge money. Though they do want to, there's people that definitely want to share their stories, but it's not the biggest priority right now. But there's this video game that I keep telling people to check out. And I don't care if you're a gamer or not, but you need to look at it. You need to understand the potential there. It's called Black Myth.
Black Mirror?
Black Myth. Here. Can I type something?
Is it Black Mirror? Yeah, did you type it?
Black Myth Wukong.
Oh, Black Myth. Okay.
So China has this kind of like in the minds of many, this like, oh, it's they don't have any, they don't create very like, the kind of media that travels well, and that's putting it, that's the more flattering way some people say. And the thing is that they actually very much do have the creative capability and capacity to do that. And this game, the trailer that came out 2 years ago, shows that this is a AAA title coming from China mainland, not Hong Kong, and this is what a bunch of game developers that got frustrated with their time in Tencent decided to try and do. And this is
Okay.
yeah. So it's the level of polish and the level of creativity and originality in this. It's sat on like gaming content worldwide on YouTube in like the top 7 for a week or something, or top 3 for a week straight. Loads and loads of Western, black, white, Latino, whatever, Asian YouTubers, gamers made reaction videos off of it, including myself. And
you did?
and so it's and this is just one. This is a couple years back, and this is just one example. There's now another one, a wuxia video game. What I'm saying is that it's not it doesn't matter if you're a gaming fan or not. This is the level of AAA blockbuster grade, global facing, like intellectual property, IP brand, entertainment brand. They're capable of doing right now. The issue here, the bottleneck here, is management. So what you have is basically there's a generation of Chinese businessmen who got very rich and wealthy in terms of manufacturing. That's their philosophy. That's their mentality. Like put these things together, and then boom, here's the thing, and this is how we can do it cheaper, quicker, faster, better. Creativity, creative work is a different kind of mindset, mentality, and organizational structure. It has to be. It's a lot flatter. People have to interact and share ideas and work together creatively more. So the bottleneck here is not the talent or the infrastructure or the technology or the desire even. It's the management structure that's still in place. And that will start to come down and melt it or collapse or just adjust for itself over time. And because the sheer volume of people that you're talking about when you always talk about China, this, what you see in Black Wukong can easily turn to 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, so on and so forth. And that can happen in the course of like a year or two, right? And when that happens, if you're a Western creator, hang on to your hats, because this is, you're talking about like, it's not just, just like, oh, it's quality. It's going to be quality plus volume. And they're going to be able to do Asian content and East Asian content far better than Westerners can.
Mm-hmm.
So this is why, again, I'm not approaching it from the angle of, oh, I'm going to try to do Asian content. No, I'm looking forward to beyond that. Okay, what is the next step beyond that? What can I deliver that they can't or won't or whatever? It's more of a novelty down the line. And it's going to get hard over time. And then so for me, it's that the goal is to be able to get there with something that, that's not quite coming out of Asia yet, but it's also kind of like, I can speak to the kind of a greater Asia Pacific audience. And over time, work with individual creators and artists in those places, in those markets, and work with them and create things together. That's how it would go. And that's kind of like in line philosophically with kind of One Championship as well. They work, they always highlight the stories of the fighters and what they go through. So the one practical piece that you can do that I think about is creating this kind of content is that you don't want to do the stupid Hollywood, ham-fisted way of, basically, Red Lantern plus a gun equals Chinese, and it's like
you want a foundation for longevity.
Yeah, and see, Chinese, like Asian people in Asia wants to see stuff like Fast and Furious. They want to see stuff like the Meg. That was a big one. Shark movie. They don't want to see. They don't care about Asian identity films like Crazy Rich Asians. Crazy Rich Asians couldn't crack $1 million in China.
Did you watch that? I never watched it.
I never watched it. I never watched it. Mulan was an insult to Chinese people.
I didn't watch that either.
Because and it was obvious from the trailer, because what they did was they used this Tulo, this big round building that's endemic to southern China, And when the story Mulan originates from northern China, as far as China is concerned, back in the day, these are like different countries within, or some different, completely different lands and cultures. So it'll be like as if, this is about, you were to make an American movie about Native Americans in the Pacific Northwest, and then you decide to say, well, it's Mayan pyramids in America, let's put that stuff up there. And really, you're going to put a Mayan pyramid, in the Pacific Northwest, and you think the average American is going to look like, whoa, what the fuck is this? That's what they did in Mulan. And that was
kind of what they're doing with the remake of Train to Busan, because Train to Busan, the nuance behind that, it was like a political nuance, social nuance that pertained to South Korea. Also, the fact that they have excellent transportation infrastructure. So for them to bring it over here to do a remake, what are they going to? I mean, the bus to New Jersey, or
where's the train? Where's this fancy train?
Right? There's no infrastructure like that here in the state.
Yeah, when you can't make a train movie because people in America were just going,
train to where?
Trains like that.
Train to where?
Snakes on the plane, zombies on the plane, yes. Trains, no. Let me make
train to where, right? God, I'm like, and I'm not gonna watch it. I'm gonna make fun of it. I'll read the reviews and everything like that, because I'm just not gonna. I'm not gonna watch.
Yeah.
I'm a snob. Just like people are picky about their food, I'm picky about my food as well, and I'm picky about what I watch. That's just an insult.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah, yeah. But it comes back to that though, how it's remake and then export and import and export and remake. It's like this is the time where where you can start making brands as like just global by default. And this is a time to build that. Because I think that's what's going to come up. Like if you're a company like One Championship operating out of Singapore, you're not thinking of yourself as as an Asian or like American or whatever. You're thinking yourselves as this like media projection that straddles the middle. And Asian Americans, I think, don't have need to reimagine like our position in this game. Okay, we may not have numbers to anchor ourselves in the same way that Tyler Perry can in the United States. But we do have the cultural acuity, and we do have enough common experience to say, let's just build our own media projection. Let's just build our own freestanding pillar of media and culture projection, and that speaks and that can connect with Asian audiences and Western audiences at a certain level, and starts at least having the vehicle to make the money, because the issue is that has always been about self-greenlighting. Self-greenlighting comes down to money. You can be the most talented writer, director, whatever, but you with your cutesy little screenplay and your story and whatever, your little show reel and your trailer, you're still sitting in front of Hollywood and begging for their money. Mm-hmm. What if you made a brand that create the kind of content, the epic kind of content that sells well, so that you at least have that taken care of, and then you can take the if you do your job right, it will be very lucrative. Mm-hmm. Then you can take that and you can start funneling cash, funneling investment funds towards young, Asian American and diaspora talent, actors and actresses, for them to have opportunity to develop their reel. Because right now, those talent are still not allowed, don't get a whole lot of opportunities.
They need sponsors.
Yeah, so they need opportunity. They flat out need roles to be written. And the roles, like the story I shared with my writing teacher back in the day, not even that long ago, the roles are not getting created because the Asian writers are being told not to write them until very recently. So all this stuff takes time, right? You're not going to plug a film student out of film school and thinks he or she's going to be experienced enough to just do well in a major movie. They have to kind of build their reel, build their experience. But Asian talent don't get that kind of opportunity because those roles are never written for them. They're always just going to be the one showing up as the extra or the side guy or this thing or that. It's like one-dimensional bullshit. It's like, and the other thing is, your audience should always think about is, it's like the audience everywhere is actually relatively all neutral. You're gonna get people who are very hardcore commit against seeing a certain kind of person presented a certain way,
Mhm.
but most people, they don't, they got their own lives to live, like I made a video like back in the day. I'm like, what do you think the average person thinks when they watch a movie trailer? Oh, there's an Asian person starting this. Well, fuck that guy, fuck that girl. I don't want to watch that. No,
There's
no,
actually people out there like that, though.
there is, but the average person doesn't care enough
Right, right.
to another. They're like, okay, is this worth? Would this be worth $15? Would this be worth taking,
Mhm.
the family to it? Would this be worth the
Right.
babysitter? Would this be worth, like, what do I, what kind of food should we eat? Beforehand, do we eat after? That's
Exactly.
the, that's the thing that they're thinking. They don't care, and so you're dealing with vast majority of audiences. You're dealing with a neutral party. So
Mhm.
the audience is not the problem, aka your customer is not the problem. They're not the bottleneck. The bottleneck's the middle people that thinks that they should have the right to determine what gets made and whether or
Mhm.
not the audience should like or not like it. And
Right,
right
right.
now, the middleman is going to get absolutely reamed over time. You know, and I say all for it. I'll be the, I got the shovel in my hand. I'm ready to bury them. I don't care.
Mhm.
Um, because like it's if you're not gonna serve the consumer, don't get in my way when I do it. You know, and don't need you, don't care, don't give a shit about you. And that is ultimately, I think, Bruce Lee's mentality.
Mhm.
He
Yep.
saw
It
Hollywood,
was. It was.
yeah, and he saw Hollywood as an obstacle to his audience, and that's
Mhm.
what it is, and that's what it still is. But it's increasingly an obstacle that's basically making itself less and less relevant. But you also got to be realistic about how these things are done. Hollywood's superpower, as shared by somebody who was in the business, who kind of worked with like some very high level people, is that they got their pipelines laid out nicely.
Mhm.
So they have the contracts all dotted and signed. So
Mhm.
when a project is approved, there is very little mystery in terms of how the money is going to be made, who gets what, and that is actually worth a lot because that's security. So that's something that Hollywood institutions have a huge advantage still.
Mhm.
But anybody can sign those contracts provided you have all the legwork done, right? And again, once again, that's why I'm focused on building a company and not just being a writer or a director.
Mhm.
I want to be the one to actually have those contracts laid out. I want to have those pipelines, the ones that that I can actually kind of direct and do what I need to do with, instead of being at the mercy of somebody else.
Right.
And these are the kind of strategic thinking, like you see, like on the one hand, I do have an emotional investment, and a lot of Asians do, and a lot of people of color do. But on the other hand, I have a very realistic, practical mind because I know how it works. And so, if we actually combine these two, and we can actually get what we need out of it. But
Mhm.
you can't just be, I want more representation. I'm going to complain about it. No
Right.
one cares, you know. But it can also be, well, it's always about money. No, it's not always about money, because there is an element of power here. In fact, to certain people in the business, it's what it's about, always power, right? So there's a reason why Asian men in particular, have been always treated a certain way. This is kind of my thinking, the way I see it, and it's because it's not always about the money. Money exists to serve power. Money is a tool and an instrument and a resource as far as power is concerned.
Mhm.
Money's here, power is here. So if particularly Asian males, get elevated psychologically or socially, that would start to eat away at the power by comparison of the people that are sitting here. So
Mhm.
then you understand that money here is no good because
Right.
it's the whole process then becomes a liability for the person holding down that top spot. So because if it's all about the money, they will be doing what I'm doing, which is building original universes starring Asians, starring young Asian guys, who, guess what, young men buy a fuck ton of media and toys and shit. Um, they will be doing that, but they're not, and they're not doing that because of that very reason. It's because it's not about the money for these people. They care about maintaining that being the kind of the default, like
Right. The
highest.
default. That's it. The
Yeah,
default.
And
Well,
so it's something I'm not, again, but they're not the audience. They're not the customer. So by my measure, I don't have to give a shit about them.
mhm,
And the audience doesn't give a shit about them. And if you build a financial vehicle, you don't have to give a shit about them. And
mhm.
you will then be able to do whatever you want to bring their worst nightmares to bear, to the front, to reality, which is make them irrelevant.
Mhm.
And that's kind of the overall arching goal is the, you got shitbags out
They're
there that want
becoming they're slowly, it's just chipping away, and they are slowly and surely, but they're becoming irrelevant, and they're throwing little hissy fits,
yeah,
especially like these those the white savior type films and stuff. People are turning that off. People are
yeah,
not interested in that
yeah,
anymore.
yeah. It comes down to, like, it's like you're not entitled to anybody's money.
Right.
I'm not, Hollywood's not, nobody is. And so don't act like you are, because one of the first questions I will pose towards Asian audiences is, are they entitled to your money and your time?
Mhm.
I don't talk to the film, I don't talk to the people who are kind of like industry people. I talk to the audience.
Mhm.
And if they're not entitled to your time, then and they're not delivering what you want to see, then they have no business showcasing their work on your screens. It's as simple
Exactly.
as that.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Well said, young man.
yeah. So yeah, I mean, like, the goal is to just create more opportunities, and allow the young talent to flourish and to be able to build a base from which to kind of go, and to have a more of a global perspective,
Mhm.
because like it seems to me like a lot of Asian Americans are the last ones to be noticed. Like, you have American companies that all setting up shop in Singapore,
Mhm.
that's spending billions to build offices and to get the people in place. Skydance Media that did Top Gun and Mission Impossible, they're hiring Chinese, talent, in their company to do what? Oh, right, to better facilitate their access to that market.
Mhm.
And yet Asian Americans are worried about how to get into some fucking beach house in Malibu. I don't get it. Like, it's like I
Assimilating.
yeah. Yeah, so the way I don't mean to hawk the mic. I know I have, but I really want to like say this
No,
one
no, no,
metaphor.
no. I want to hear your perspective. I asked you as a guest. You're my
Okay.
guest. I
Yeah.
want to hear what you have
So,
to say.
so this it comes back down to the little bamboo wall, and like, like, oh, we gotta get past it. And the channel Fun Bros in
Hmm.
on YouTube, you know them?
I've heard the name from what is it? What's their
Fun
show
Bros. Yeah,
platform?
they're like couple Asian American guys who run a pretty popular channel. So one of the big channels, one Food Productions, the other one.
Do they have
I
a
don't
TikTok?
probably, but
Okay.
whatever the case, so they were. There's a lot of inside the Asian community. There's a bit of drama, to say the
Hmm.
least, about the kind of Asians that are getting highlighted and getting the opportunities.
Yes,
Um,
I've seen that. It's
particularly,
a fight. Some
yeah.
kind of.
So when there's Asian female talent and actresses, then the like monoracial Asian women are not discriminated against, in terms of getting cast for Asian roles, Asian specific roles, when those roles are do exist. I'm
Hmm.
not saying, there's definitely a lot of room for improvement for everybody, but when there's an Asian female like character role, monoracial full Asian women are not, can pretty much be certain that they're going to get an even shot.
Hmm.
That same is not the case for Asian male roles. So for Asian male roles, particularly the hero lead and roles with romantic partner
Hmm.
variety, like most of the time it's going towards an Asian who has Caucasian background in them,
Right.
an Asian male, a HAPA, and and this has not gone unnoticed among Asian men, and when monoracial Asian men. And so when full Asian men talk about this, obviously we're getting shouted down for being called gatekeepers, or oh, are we not Asian enough? And the kind of the response I have is, am I not white enough? Is that what this is? You can ask that same question in a different way, and it will be pretty fucked up too.
Hmm.
Um, and so um, and what the Fun Brothers did is, it's like, oh, all this, the Crazy Rich Asians, this. the farewell and all these like incoming projects that star Asians that have stories like that, they're like talking about it, but they're trying to be as PC as possible. They're like, it's like we've all been waiting in this line to get in the club for a long time, and now it seems like finally they lifted the velvet rope for the Asians, and then all of a sudden these people who were distancing themselves, and from their identity,
Right.
are getting pulled in the head of the line.
I've been seeing that. I've been seeing that a lot since last year. And a
Yeah.
lot of Asians, like full Asians, like what you're saying, have been discussing it. So I've been watching that it's been a back and forth.
Yeah. And so they gave us metaphor. It's interesting because I have the same metaphor, but I look at it from a very different perspective. Quite literally, it's like this club, this Hollywood club, Hollywood Beach House, and now all these but you other you Asians over here, you need to just wait a bit longer. You full Asian men need to just stay in the back of the line and be satisfied and wait a little bit longer. It will get your turn, even though we've been waiting here the longest,
Right.
technically. So and I look at that entire scene and I have a much more different perspective, because the way I see it is this: I see a beach house, and I'm sitting like 500 feet above on a rock outcropping. I'm looking at this beach house and all these people trying to get in, and they're dressed to the nines, and they're finally in. They're talking about the barbecue and how great the food is, and who's driving up and what, and who's got what on, who's wearing what. And then I'm looking ahead towards the horizon, and I'm looking back down at the house again, at the mansion, and I'm like, that's a tsunami coming, and I see it, I can smell it, I can feel it, and I don't give a rat's ass what the barbecue is like there. I don't care, because that's what's coming. You did remember it's like one entertainment brand, 2, 4, 8. There you go. And all that effort to get into that little beach house, and I'm sitting here and I'm building a super yacht, is the way I see it. That's what my company is. Because when that tsunami comes in, I don't want to be down there and getting buried. I want to be right in the top.
Right.
And the funny thing is, companies like One Championship and creators in Asia, they're the ones that are going to be generating that tsunami. They're going to be fine because they're the ones that's going to be like pushing that and energizing it. And so this is why I think it's so like a bit damaging to hear the Fun Brothers say what they say, because it's like, oh, just wait a few years. If you just wait however many years, 10 years, things would change. I'm like, you think you got 10 years? You think you got 10 years before this thing hits? Really? You don't got 10 years, kid. You got like 3 to 5 to get your foot under you before it starts showing up at the shore, at the shoreline. And that's kind of the urgency I have. That's why I'm like always looking. I'm looking further away. I'm looking at what's coming, and I want to be best situated to take advantage of it. And because what's going to happen is it's going to be like it's going to be just that. If you look at some of the Asian American talent, a lot of them are not going to be able to capable of being stars, across Asia Pacific. And some people say, well, fine, whatever, okay. But the thing is, ultimately, the corporations, the Hollywood companies, they're going to be fine. They paved their way. They paved their way already. They've already anchored themselves. Right. So and you already seen this.
Yep.
What happens? They go they go with a Chinese actress for Mulan. They go with Korean actors and actresses for Squid Games.
Right.
If we don't build our own super yacht, if we don't build our own goddamn boats to meet this wave and ride on top of it and get our piece out of it, it's going to be too late when that hits. And so
I actually saw them doing that after the Parasite. After Parasite, there are articles about, and even more so after Squid Game, because like they really thought Parasite was a fluke until it won the awards, and then when they won the awards, then there was a lot of complaining and stuff going on there, and then it quieted down. But then when Squid Games came, it kind of was like a wake up because they're like, oh, whoa. So now they're trying to slither in behind the success of Squid Games so they can try to get their tentacles into that and anchor themselves into that. And
Yeah,
I'm like, I don't
yeah,
want to see that. I want to see Squid Games and artists and then, the Asian people, like what you're saying. I want to see you guys thrive,
mhm,
you know?
yeah, yeah. It's like it's basically it's going to move a lot. It seems like it's moving slowly, but it's actually, I think, it's moving a lot faster. It's not, and it's moving faster not just because people are doing things. It's moving faster because the land is getting, like, the ground
Mhm.
underneath your feet is getting reshaped. It's a
It's a
complete
slow
shift.
roll. It's a
Yeah,
slow,
well,
steady roll.
it's like it's not just me running towards, like what I define to be success. Is that I know, like, the, that moment is closing in on me, to a certain speed. And I want to be ready for it, when it happens. I want to be ready for it. I want to be like, it's like merging into like a on ramp. You want to
Mhm.
be perfect level at the right moment when you make contact.
Right.
Too early and it will be a rough landing. Too late and it will be, your opportunity won't be there. It will be very difficult.
Mhm.
Um, but like, it's just better to be early. It's just better to get there a little bit so you're ready for it.
Mhm.
And there's and some of the most, again, it's the most quote unquote influential Asian Americans in the business that are still putting this whole thing of, oh, in 20 years things are going to change. It's like, you don't have
I see
20
a lot
years.
of that too.
Yeah, you don't have 10 years. You have 5 at most to really get your ball rolling. Because if you wait past that, then it's going to be a lot more difficult. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm not
Mhm.
saying that things can't change, but I get the feeling that, over the next couple of years, people are going to start seeing it. And I just hope enough, talented Asian diaspora, Asian Americans are ready, are actually going to just go ahead and get started. Because
Well, that's the point of this broadcast and this show too, is so that
yeah,
you can share it and they can hear that because a lot of people aren't paying attention. I'm paying
mhm.
attention. You're paying attention. A lot of people aren't.
Yeah, no, exactly. And yeah, it's like within the Asian community, there's definitely a select group that's being handpicked to be the speakers of the community.
I see a lot of
And
that. It happens
yeah,
in our community too. It's like, wait a minute, they're not
yeah,
speaking for me. Wait a
and
minute,
yeah,
ask
and
me.
the thing is, these types, their whole. If you look at some of their mea culpas, they write about, every so often they write about, like recently there's been a rash of articles about how, oh, like, all this anti-Asian hate has inspired me to reclaim my identity and be proud of being Asian. And it's like, so why the hell am I? What gives you the right to opine on anything if you hated being Asian your entire adult life? We should be hearing from people that like, again, no other minority group has leadership that basically comes out and says, actually, I hated being this particular my a member of this minority up until very recently. It's like, that doesn't happen.
I saw a whole IG post by I can't remember the Asian lady that wrote it. It was the young lady, and she was Asian or considered Asian maybe. And so basically, but she looked, aesthetically she looked Asian, and but she was mixed.
Yeah,
And up until this point of acknowledgement and where everybody's paying attention to the Asian community and talent now, she wrote a whole IG post. Like I read it because I couldn't believe like what you the look on your face. That's kind of how I was. I was just like, and I had to read it for myself just so I could see it myself for context too. And I was like, I can't believe like she's really writing this out like she thinks this is okay to write out like this. Like
and again, they say it without a hint of irony or self awareness, and they think and they think somehow being more ashamed of themselves or language and their cultures, and outright refusal to even see, the men of their community as full human beings, because it's I mean, they write, oh, like, I didn't date Asian guys, I thought they looked my fathers and brothers and cousins. So you can't tell the difference between me and a random Asian dude related to you. and I'm supposed to look at you and think, yeah, you have a right to speak about me, for me, to me.
I'm
That
so
makes no
glad.
sense.
I keep talking because I mean, I like actually because I've been following that drama that's in your community for a
And
couple of years now, and actually hearing it from someone in the community, I'm like,
and the thing is, like Asian men are not allowed to say stuff like this openly without being vilified. Oh, you're just a misogynistic incel, MR Asian, men's rights activist, or men's rights Asian, or something like that. I'm like, no, these are your words. You said that we remind you of your male relatives. You can't tell the difference between me, just a Asian guy, and another Asian guy who you're related to. Your words. So what gives you the right to stand there and act like you're some sort of leader or speak on behalf of the community? You know, what gives? It makes no sense. And and the thing is, they're always the last. There's no self awareness there. It's just like. But the funny thing is, every other group who's not even Asian are laughing at, laughing under their breath and looking at each other like, you would look at probably someone, who's not even Asian. I'm like, yeah, are you reading this? Is this weird?
yeah, I
You know,
mean, yeah, I was
it's like
because,
it's like
and there's another thing is because I wasn't aware that you guys had those kind of issues in your community as well,
yeah,
because I mean, I know like every community has their issues,
yeah,
but I didn't
exactly.
know that you guys had that it was that deep of
No,
that kind of an issue.
it's deep, and the thing is, it's deep, and to a tragic extent.
Hmm.
It's kind of over. As in, there's guys like me. I pretty much just like, what? It's not a conversation worth having, debating, because when you have this bunch that is the blue checks on Twitter that speaks about all Asians, and they have no self awareness, and their bullshit, their emperors is ass naked, and everybody, white, black, Latino, can just point to it and say, that's ass naked right there. That's marching down the street, butt naked, and acting like they're fully clothed. And when people who are aware try to tell you, and when they say something, when non-Asians say something, call them out on it, they just
Hmm.
pretend, like it's like eyes closed, don't hear it, don't want to hear it. When Asian guys call them out on that, it's like, oh, you're toxic, misogynistic, who feels entitled, like you have ownership over us. It's like, and so like guys like me is basically like, what? What's the point? I have a bigger mission. I have much bigger dreams and goals, and I
Hmm.
think every like Asian with awareness should have those. Like, you stop worshiping Bruce Lee and start actually behaving like him by mentality and by action and force of will. Don't have time to hash this out, because it's no longer.
He would
It has
appreciate
no.
that a lot more too.
Huh?
What you just said, if
What?
you he would have appreciated that a lot more too,
Yeah.
acting like what his philosophy, not acting
Yeah.
like him, because
Yeah.
everybody is different in their own way, but
That
honor
was
his
his
philosophy.
entire. That was his entire cross-cultural racial appeal. It's like he taught everybody, you
Yeah, the
know.
black community loves Bruce Lee still to
Yeah,
this day.
and
Yep.
and so he did, and people just, he was like, what, if you want to join, if you want to look at what I can do, and I can show you as much as I can, and that's really what it was coming down to, that exchange, and it's like, so let's just go with that, but
Hmm.
take it up a notch that's appropriate for this century and this decade,
Right.
and and
His
and
philosophy is universal.
exactly. And so don't worship the guy. Just do what it takes to, like, actually honor his memory, which is to
Hmm.
kick ass, and don't quit, and go and have a much bigger vision. You
Right.
see, like, it's like you can either look at the, like, at the bamboo wall and the bamboo ceiling as this, as in front of your face, or you can just go like that. Oh, it's tiny, you
Hmm.
know. And why would I care about getting to the 30-mile radius TMZ when the ocean, with immense resources, with Asia that is 40 to 50% of the world population, with rising purchasing power, that's
Hmm.
key,
Hmm.
instead of the 5% that's in the United States, and with stagnant purchasing power. Why do I want to fixate on trying to get into this little thing when I have direct access to that?
Hmm.
And the headache and the amount of time and energy spent to get into this little TMZ is going to be probably more of a hassle than just fucking going over there and doing my thing, starting anew. And that's kind of what I want. That's the opportunity that I want diaspora Asians to see. And the thing is that there's African Americans that are aware of this too. I heard them in Clubhouse when I was on that platform, and they say the same words. And this is not me sharing it with them. This is I just heard them say it. And it's like, yeah, it's a world market. Why the hell are we waiting around here for?
Right.
Let's go get it. So, but yeah, it is what it is, And that whole drama to me, it's like ultimately I'm a pragmatist. That's why I always call to, like I talk about the numbers, I talk about the purchasing power, I talk about, the amount of time it takes to do things. I'm a pragmatist at base, and it's like, to me, drama has to be worth something, It needs to be worth headache. Like the headache needs to be worth dollars in my pocket.
I'm not laughing at you, but it's the way you said it.
Yeah.
The way you said it.
Yeah, the drama needs to be worth something. And if the drama, especially whatever hell, like the Asian identity, navel gazing drama, ultimately, if it brings you, all it does is just waste your time, then why are you talking, why bother? It doesn't do anything. It doesn't achieve anything. And you've been spinning your wheels the same way, navel gazing about your identity, angst, and issues. Oh, this little girl looked at me weird when I brought my food. Like, how old are you? You're 34, and you're complaining about what happened to you when you're 7. And it wasn't as if like you saw somebody get killed in front of you. No, somebody made fun of your food. Is it shitty? Sure, but come on, And if that's the continuous narrative that's always there, it's worth nothing. Nobody cares.
Right.
It's literally worth $0. And ultimately, do you want to have the dollars to make the kind of things you want to make, or do you not? And if you want to do that, then you got to think about it and to have much more of a wider perspective. You got to make things that Asians across the planet actually care about and want to see. Mm-hmm. Then those things are going to be 4-quadrant, like high concept stuff, so that you can then bring the money back in to create the things that are more specific to Asian identity. So this is not to bash Asian identity stories. This is just say, because the whole goal is to be able to have longevity, is to be able to just keep making stuff. Mm-hmm. So if you don't have your financial foot set and you're constantly pitching for your life and you got to worry about your food and your rent, and all you have is this very specific, narrow-banded, audience-targeted content that that probably won't break even. So what? You max out your credit cards, you beg your friends and family for money, and then you go into debt, and there's no guarantee that movie that you made is going to be able to get any real traction, and you still got to pay that back. Like, what I'm doing, like the trademark I'm putting down, is going to cost into close to 5 figures now. But that's something that's essentially like kind of equivalent of getting a pink slip to a car or house.
It's an investment.
Yeah. It says like what I created, I own legally under the guise of the government. And after I do it here in the United States, I'll start to look else. I'll start to look towards Asia, Singapore, China, because that's how I'm going to play it. I don't care like about Western Europe at this point. But this is something that like I really hope anybody who's come in as kind of out of the system, like I'm working with people in LA, I'm working with people in Australia. The guy that did my modeling for one of my vehicles, Serbia. You don't need to be anywhere in particular, but you do have to have the skill set to know how to work with people remotely, and you do know how to like put together documentation that can enable you to collaborate.
I'm excited for you. I'm gonna join your team too.
Yeah,
I'm just inviting myself to join your team. It takes a lot of work. That's what I do every day, from the time I go to sleep, time I wake up.
Yep, indeed, yeah. So, I mean, like it sounds like so you want to kind of approach, like kind of the the Philippines a bit, like that side of that
Well,
particular.
I want to approach basically the BIPOC community where
Mhm,
not just black, but black, Asian, indigenous, um,
mhm,
that everybody have a place at the table. Like this is our table. So,
mhm,
like I was telling a friend, although I'm still in the beginning ages. So,
yeah.
but everybody has their own talent. Say
Mhm,
photography, social media,
mhm,
writers, directors. Everybody has their
mhm,
talent, and then but to help work together. Kind of
mhm,
kind
mhm.
of like exactly like yours, what you're doing, but the same thing except for it's BIPOC centered.
Yeah,
For
yeah,
our stories, the way we
yeah,
want to tell them.
yeah. And the my approach of it is like because ultimately it's like you know I'm Chinese by background, and I'm also American by background. I'm also been kind of raised in the Western culture, but
Hmm.
I've also held on to kind of the Eastern side. I have a real appreciation for it, but I don't know, my knowledge depth is not that deep in it.
Hmm.
So I'm not going to go into something. I'm not going to jump into something that unless I'm pretty well knowledge about it. But
Right.
in terms of like the kind of my creative IP is like there are certain stories that are going to be definitely like not going to have a whole lot of trappings of Eastern culture,
Hmm.
and there's certain characters within that universe that are going to have more of it than others. And so, um, like my approach is to go hit with the genre, because like people in zombies a thing, like it's a genre for Asians
Hmm.
as well. It's not my IP.
Right. Right.
Just
Yep.
gonna be, big shark, eating
You
like
like sharks?
people. Yeah, like Alex. Yeah.
You like
Like,
sharks?
yeah, like big sharks eating people in scuba gear is something that a lot of people can enjoy, right?
Right.
But
Right.
it's the characters within these genre stories that can bring
Hmm.
the culture a bit. So,
Right.
for example,
Like the host.
yeah, yeah. For example, like one of the concepts I have, I'm developing is a space racing concept. You
Hmm.
know, and the main lead character is Asian and there's a bit of Chinese by background, but he's going to be going up against like like 32 teams, and there's going to be another opposing character that's going to be the antagonist, not necessarily a villain, but an antagonist, and that antagonist could be somebody from another culture.
Hmm.
And you see, like, even though what draws the people in is going to be the sci-fi, the high concept element, but then I will have to work with somebody from that culture to see, okay, so the character is this is the
Right.
background, and then so this is how like the way Hollywood does it. They try to bash you over the head right now with the woke stuff,
Right.
and
Right.
it's like maybe you have they have the best intentions, but it's just ham-fisted. It's not it's not very graceful, and it's almost kind of like patronizing.
I
Um,
think
but
the term woke has basically been hijacked because it
yeah,
doesn't mean what it used to be,
yeah,
what
exactly,
it initially meant. So
yeah,
it's basically
and
been hijacked to be like a all, kind of like a
yeah,
boogeyman word.
and because what they're doing is like it's like most people are just when they go about the daily life, they're normal. They're pretty normal, like it's like when you go into their homes, you see some very specific stuff, but when they're out and about, they're normal, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. So what you want to do is like you can tell this kind of story, and you can lead with the genre that's kind of the plane where everybody can access and enjoy it, and then you can just drop in a little piece of spices here,
Hmm.
but you don't put that and then and just shake that in people's faces,
Hmm.
and then
Right,
because
right, right.
very
I know. Yeah.
yeah, it takes you out of it, and it's like, am I getting lectured or am I getting entertained? Because it's hard to tell, and you don't want people asking any of those questions.
Uh-huh.
You want people to enjoy the moment, and every so often they see, oh, okay. Like for example, if I work with um, a Filipino like or African American like actor or an actress, wherever for that particular lead role, um, depending on who I cast or whatever how the story's written, then there can be elements of that character and that background in there, and then you just see it, and then it'll be a reference that like if you're part of that group, you might be able to tell.
Right,
If you
right.
can't tell, it's like it would just go harmony passing, just whatever. But
Exactly.
ultimately, yeah, people can enjoy the fun, you
Mhm.
know, just the stuff they're there for, and then they can also get like kind of a little bit of like a dash of this and here and there, and that's how you do it without being, you know, without being like cringe and without being just try harding and
Right.
you know,
And see, that's where like when I was talking about I would like to be like a consultant behind the scenes. So say like of us were consultants behind the scenes. Say we're just sitting there and we're watching them, you know, go through the script and they're filming and they're going through it. So we're basically sitting at the table. We're consultants, and then we can stop them at that cringe point and say, look,
yeah,
check the box, and this is why, you know, the pros and cons of that cringe
yeah,
and how it's not going to work.
yeah.
And then
My,
see, they don't have that. They don't obviously have
I
people.
mean, my personal approach is always to lead by example. It's
Mhm.
just the thing is, people are going to be drawn. Like people may like something and they can't even see like precisely why, but they're going to
Right,
go toward that which they like, and they're going to go away from the things that they don't like. You
right.
know, and so when you offer up, like for me, it's like, you know, it's like if they want to keep, you know, putting out, you know, things that kind of, you know, tick off Asian audiences or whatever, like they want to marginalize, you know, like, you know, people that are like me. Okay, I'm going to utilize as an opportunity to take your market share.
Mm.
That's what, you know, like if you want to put out Mickey Rooney and do the Breakfast at Tiffany's character, then I'm gonna really make you pay like out the ass for it, because it's just I'm gonna utilize that as a way to really ream you out good and then showcase a completely different image, you know.
That's
And
exactly
so
how I feel. Reclaiming
yeah,
my image because I don't watch those Real Housewives shows, but those Real Housewives shows are detrimental to my image.
hmm
And if I go anywhere in the world, and
hmm
people that watch those housewives shows, they're gonna automatically think I'm like those
yeah,
housewives. You see what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
so
yeah,
I'm just like you. I'm gonna okay take that because I don't watch them obviously because I don't like that
yeah,
stuff. I'm gonna take it and focus on reclaiming my image.
yeah, exactly, exactly. And you know, it's an exciting time for me. You know, like it's I just I just wish, like, you know, I'm trying to change the narrative bits. It's like to see this as like a massive opportunity, and also just get the urgency to just get it done.
Hmm.
Instead of thinking that it's going to change. It's not going to change, because by that time that quote unquote change that you think is going to happen, what's going to happen is you're going to, you know, you're going to get sidelined altogether.
Hmm.
Um, because ultimately Asians in Asia doesn't care that much about Asian diaspora either. It's not because of anything bad. It's just like it's not in their realm of concern.
Right.
Um, so so for us to be able to kind of, you know, be our own best advocate, we're gonna have to make ourselves and our content matter in a way to
Hmm.
them,
Hmm.
that's accessible, so that we can then start gathering resources to do other things, you know, that are more specific.
Right.
Because some of these stories should be told, and some of these stories, it's just that when you're like trying to do the, you know, find, you know, artsy fartsy like little identity specific thing, you're basically mortgaging your future, you know, in something that's inherently doesn't that's not going to generate the kind of return and give you that kind of longevity.
Hmm. Yep. That's the point. Longevity.
Yep, yep, it is. It's saying
Changing
again
the
and again.
narrative and longevity.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I mean, like I got to head out, but it's great
Okay.
chatting. I kind of, you know, hot the conversation.
No, no,
So
no. You were my guest, and thank you very much for joining me because this was great, great, great. So once I get done, I'm going to post the links for the coffee and stuff. You see, like coffee, it's very good coffee. They go
mhm.
to their father's Nigerian, so they go to
Oh,
Nigeria. Like,
yeah.
oh my God, it's really good coffee. So I'll post
Mhm.
the link, but you can go check it out later. But when I get done editing our video, then I'll send you the link. Thank you so much.
Thank you for
Thank you
having me.
so much.
Really
Thank
enjoyed it. Yeah.
you.
All right.
I'll talk to
That's
you.
it.
Call me and message me later.
Yep. Yep. See you later, Sarah.
Okay, bye
Thanks.
bye.